It was 2004, and I had moved out to Southern California from the Midwest in the middle of second grade. And because I moved to Southern California, it gave me the unique opportunity to have an annual pass. So along with going to Disneyland, it meant I was able to go to the newly opened in 2001 Disney's California Adventure. Now, I visited DCA multiple times from around 2004 to 2007. A lot of people have said the early years of California Adventure was terrible, that this park was not good in those years. And in this video, I wanted to give my thoughts on the original California Adventure from the perspective of a child of having gone to this park during those years. So first I want to go over the entranceway. Now, the entrance was something completely different than what's there now. Basically, when you walked up to the park, in between Disneyland and DCA, there was the spelling out of the word California in these massive individual letters. And so this is one of the things that I really liked about the entrance to DCA as a kid. It was so cool just seeing these massive letters in my perspective, and there's all these people, standing around them, people getting pictures of each of them, and it was just this really awesome entrance, and I just thought that it was really, really cool. And the whole idea of the entrance being like a postcard of California, I think was a really great idea. Now, one of the things that I remember seeing as a kid too was this Golden Gate Bridge. Now, the Golden Gate Bridge was something that I always thought kind of looked kind of strange. Like, the perspective of it was not correct. Like, there was something that was just kind of weird about it. Like, it shortened from what the actual bridge was in real life. And so as a kid, I was able to go up to San Francisco around that time, and it didn't really compare to the actual bridge in real life. Although I will say it was pretty cool whenever you saw the monorail passing over that bridge. And I vaguely remember seeing that orange Zephyr train at the entranceway, which was really awesome. And another thing that I don't really remember that much was the Golden Sun fountain at the end of the entranceway. It fit well with the theme of the California postcard, with the sun back there kind of setting, but it just didn't really look nearly as good as the castle in Disneyland, calling to you at the end of Main Street. It was something that I think in theory sounded good, but in real life it wasn't really able to live up to the expectations. The next thing I want to talk about is the Hollywood Pictures backlot. Now, unfortunately I wasn't able to ever experience the Superstar Limo Dark ride. And that was only open for less than a year after the park opened in 2001. But I'd been on the Monsters Inc. ride there that replaced it many times. And I have to say that Monsters Inc. is one of my favorite movies, but I never really have seen how that ride fit into the theme of Hollywood. I like the Monsters Inc. ride, but I've always felt like it deserved, something more than just kind of like a reskin of an old attraction. Now, one of the other major rides in this area of the park around these early years of DCA was Tower of Terror. As a kid, when I was there in the early 2000s, the Tower of Terror was just too scary to go on. But, growing up since then, I've really grown to love that ride. And, I have to say now that I'm one of the people that's still sad that Tower of Terror has gone from DCA and was rethemed into the Mission Breakout ride. I just thought that the Tower of Terror was a better themed ride than Mission Breakout, and it fit well with that Hollywood area of the park. During those early years of DCA, I think I also maybe watched the Muppets 3D show there a couple times, and I think I enjoyed it back then, and since then I've seen it at least once or twice here at Disney World, and I really enjoyed that show, but I don't really remember going to see it that many times. And, I never saw the Playouts Disney show that was there. I think that was really just mainly for younger kids than I was, and I only ever really briefly walked into that animation building, and I never really stayed in there that long. This area of the park, this Hollywood Pictures backlot, it's changed since when I was there, but, it hasn't drastically changed. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future Disney has plans to retheme this area to something different, maybe some other IP or something like that. But it fits well with California. How can you have, a California theme park and not talk about Hollywood? The next area of the park that I want to talk about is A Bug's Land. I feel like this land was really designed for kids that were younger than I was in second grade. When I went to the park, I never really went on the rides there in that Bugs Land area that much. I only remember going on the bumper cars there once, and then I never went on the other rides like the Heinleich's Choo Choo Train or the Flix Flyers ride. And the Bountiful Valley Farm area that was kind of within a Bugs Land at that time, there were some Caterpillar tractors there, and they left around late 2006. This area of the park wasn't really that super appealing to me as a kid in elementary school. The next themed area I want to talk about is the Golden State area. And within this, I want to talk about Pacific Wharf first. The thing that I love most about this area was the bread tour. My family and I would always go over to do this bread tour, and we would get our free piece of sourdough bread. I believe this area of the park is still generally the same as what it looked like when it opened up when I was there in elementary school, but they just announced they're retheming it into the San Francisco city from Big Hero 6. Hopefully this time they can get right the Golden Gate Bridge. That'd be nice. The next area that I want to talk about within the Golden State is Condor Flats, and really the only thing in this land is Soarin, California, and in my opinion, this was one of the greatest things that came out of DCA. As a kid, I really loved going on this ride, and I still do to this day. I grew to love the soundtrack and really just the immersive nature of the ride. As a kid, it just grew my love for living in California. You had the scenes with Yosemite, you had people skiing, there was the scene with the ocean there, and there was the smell of like the orange groves, and then there's like the whitewater rafting scene. And going on this ride growing up, one of the cool things was you saw things in this movie and then you could go to that real place in real life, and I think that's what made this attraction so cool as a kid. Growing up in California, you got to go to these places and you got to see these places, and it just really made you love California even more, and also made you love this ride even more. It was really just a special ride, and it still is to this day for me. The next thing I want to talk about is the Grizzly Peak Recreation Area within the Golden State area. The main ride within this area of the park was Grizzly River Run. Now, this was one of my family's and myself as well, our favorite rides at the park. It's still by far my favorite water rafting ride that I've been on. The Grizzly Bear Peak, that just looked so cool in my opinion, and it still does. And we would go on this ride again and again and again when there was no line at night, when it got a little bit colder. It was just so much fun, and you never knew if you're going to get hit by that big geyser at the end of the ride. And I'm glad that this ride still exists in the park. It kind of reminds me of growing up. My family around that time went to the Merced River in Yosemite Valley there, and we floated down on these little inner tubes on the river there, and maybe that was part of the inspiration for the ride, but I think a lot of the inspiration was the whitewater rafting at Kings Canyon in California, for example. And right next to Grizzly River Run, was the Redwood Creek Challenge. And back when I was there as a kid growing up, it was themed around the Brother Bear movie. Now, the Brother Bear movie, I wasn't actually allowed to watch that movie growing up, so I don't really remember spending that much time in this area, but I do remember going over there, and I'm glad to see that it still exists to this day, and I think that it's a fun play area for kids. The next attraction I want to talk about within the Golden State area was Golden Dreams. I only remember seeing this movie once, and coming out of it, I remember thinking that it was really weird, and I believe my mom thought that as well, and it was just kind of a strange movie, and I think it talked about the history of California, but as a kid, I can see why it's only lasted for 7 years or so. Since then it's been replaced with the Little Mermaid attraction, which in my opinion really isn't that good either, but at least I think it's better than what the movie was. But I do remember kind of this big dome structure. It was based off of the San Francisco Palace of Arts, and I've been there myself, the actual real life place, and it's a pretty cool structure. So I'm glad that they were able to base that kind of theater facade off of something in real life, and I think that's really cool. It's just the actual execution of the movie itself, I just remember it being weird, and I'm glad that it's gone. The next thing I want to talk about is the Pacific Pier area of the park. Now, this was one of my favorite parts of the park when I was there in elementary school, and it's crazy how much has changed since I was there back then. I really loved the style and the iconography of the signs and everything around that area of the park. You had the sunglass hut with that huge dinosaur there, and that was always really cool to see that. And you had the McDonald's restaurant, which is called Burger Invasion, and I thought that was pretty cool as a kid as well, and I enjoyed eating McDonald's, so that was something that as a kid I liked. Then you had that Pizza Umama restaurant, which I don't think I ever ate at, but looking back at the pictures, it just looks so cool as a restaurant with this kind of like surfing theme and California theme. And, now you just have this kind of like generic, really boring, like boardwalk pizza and pasta restaurant, which I guess it's a little bit more classy, kind of, and it looks nice. But why change it? You didn't really need to do that. Another kind of like small attraction in this area was the SS Restworthy. Now, this is like a water play area, and I believe it was like right next to the McDonald's there. But this is something that as a kid that I enjoyed going on and just having fun just playing around there in the water. And it was kind of like this boat, and you could like do different things, and it was just a lot of fun. And I'm sad that it's gone now. I wish that they wouldn't have taken it out, but it's good to hear now that they're gonna have something probably similar at the new Toontown area in Disneyland with Donald Duck's boat. And so that's cool to see, and hopefully they can make that a lot of fun for kids. One of the rides that I miss the most about the early DCA when I was there is Mulholland Madness. Now, this is just like a Wild Mouse roller coaster, but this was just so much fun as a kid going on this ride. And I still do feel like this ride was just themed so well. It fit the Southern California theme. And in Southern California, there's this like road called Mulholland Drive. And around this time, my family drove on this road, just for fun, but it's kind of like this twisting and turning road around like this mountain. I believe it's near Los Angeles. And I just remember in real life going on this road, and it was kind of twisting and turning, and we were like kind of like on like the edge of a cliff almost, and it was really scary. But I remember pulling out on this road, and we were at like a small pullout. It was like a dirt pullout, and like the edge of the cliff was like right there next to us, and that was just really scary as a kid. I remember going on that, and that kind of brings me back to this ride where you're going around these edges, around these turns on this roller coaster, and you feel like you're gonna fall off. And this theme of this coaster fits so well to what the actual real life experience was. And it's really sad they just took out this ride and rethemed it to Goofy Sky School, which, I mean, I get it, people wanted the Disney characters into DCA, but as a kid, I just really enjoyed this ride and getting to see how it fit in with California and living there, and I just wish they wouldn't have rethemed it. Another attraction that I really liked in this Pacific Pier area as a kid was the orange swings. The big orange there, I just felt like it was just so iconic sitting there on the side of the Bay Area. Yeah, maybe it would look kind of strange, right now during World of Color, if you have that big orange sitting over there, maybe it would look kind of weird, but still, I feel like it just was better the way it used to be. Another ride in early DCA was the Maliboomer. Now, this is just kind of like a drop tower ride that just shot you up into the air and brought you back down and stuff like that, and it's kind of like a standard type of ride at a lot of amusement parks. This is something that I was too scared to go on as a kid, so I never went on it when it was there. But I do remember it being there, and I just remember also seeing like these plastic shields around each person's seat, and I thought that was just like to stop like the throw up of someone if they vomited. But I guess that was really just to stop the screams from being heard, outside the park. But I am glad that they removed this. It didn't really need to be there after Tower of Terror came in, and it never really was something that was up to the Disney quality of an attraction, I feel like. So I wanted to save the best for last, and the best ride, in my opinion, at DCA when I was there as a kid was California Screamin'. This roller coaster was just so much fun as a kid growing up there. And when I lived there, I lived like right next to Magic Mountain, and I never went on the roller coasters there because they were just too scary. They were like these huge roller coasters, and it was just too intimidating as a kid in elementary school to go on them, even though I lived like right next to them. But I wasn't too scared to go on California Screamin'. So that roller coaster was the first roller coaster that I went on that had like a launch and also had that inversion, and I think that was just really just like the perfect stepping stone into going on a more thrilling roller coaster. I had been on Big Thunder Mountain, Railroad, and Space Mountain at Disneyland, but I had never been on a tough roller coaster as California Screamin'. It made me really love roller coasters, even more. And then later on in life, I went to Cedar Point, and I was able to go on some more thrilling roller coasters there than California Screamin'. So I think that it really was like the perfect stepping stone. I really loved the California theme, and there's that cool music in the background that played while you're going on the ride, and you had that launch sequence with talking every time you went about to launch, and I feel like it was just a really cool roller coaster. I'm glad that it was made for this park. Now it's themed to The Incredibles, and I haven't been on the Incredicoaster yet. And I do really like the Incredibles movie. It's one of my favorite movies. But I am disappointed that they removed the California Screamin' theme to the roller coaster. That was just a roller coaster that meant so much to me growing up. I have to say that going to Disneyland and DCA during these years of my life in elementary school really changed the rest of my life. If I hadn't moved to Southern California and had that annual pass to Disneyland, I probably wouldn't have a love for theme parks or roller coasters like I do today. And as a kid, I don't really remember DCA being terrible. In fact, I remember it being a lot of fun going there. And I never remember thinking when I was there as a kid, just thinking that the park seemed cheap compared to Disneyland. Sure, I didn't like it as much as Disneyland. I thought that Disneyland was better, but that doesn't mean that it was terrible. In fact, I think that, some of the iconography of the park, like the entranceway and like the Pacific Pier area, I thought that was really just a lot of fun, and as a kid I really enjoyed it, and I think that the artistic style of the park really was made with kids in mind. I think that was something that probably kids like me really enjoyed seeing, and so I'm sad to see that it's gone now. And as someone who was a California resident for much of their life, I'm sad to see that California is being removed in so much of DCA. You might as well not even call it Disney California Adventure anymore if you're taking out all of California from it. I think that DCA, going there growing up as a kid, that original version of it really wasn't all that bad. It wasn't as bad as what a lot of people make it out to be. I will say now that they've made all these changes to DCA, I think that it is objectively a better park, but that's not to say that there weren't things in the original version of DCA that were better than they are now. Like the removal of that pizza Umamau restaurant. It is kind of sad to see that the original version of DCA, it only lasted for about 10 years, and I'm never going to be able to see the way the park was when I was there as a kid ever again, which is pretty sad. I think that the changes that they made though, so like the Buena Vista Street, that entrance is better than what it used to be, but I wish they would have kept the California, large letters at the entranceway. I wish they wouldn't have removed those. And the addition of Cars Land was just a really great addition. I really enjoyed that part of the park. It feels like, you're actually out west in like Utah or something like that. And I'm also glad they added in World of Color. I really enjoyed that Nighttime Spectacular. It's one of my favorite shows that I've ever seen. So they've definitely made a lot of great changes since the early 2000s when I was there as a kid, but not everything that they've made changes to has been for the better, in my opinion. The last time I was at DCA was around 2018, so I haven't been there for about 4 years. And so I'm planning on going there out to DCA and Disneyland again later this year, and so I'm really excited to go see that. And so if you want to see my reactions to that, to DCA and just thoughts about DCA now in 2022, you can subscribe to my channel called Thrill Time, and I'll post videos about that here in the future. And also, if you really enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you give it a like. That really means a lot to me. And I'd like to hear, your comments below, what your feelings about the original version of DCA was if you went there growing up, or, if you were there in those early 2000s. Just I'd like to hear, your thoughts about it and, the changes that they made since then. All right, I'll see you in the next one.